Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. Today is Friday, and my normal Friday videos recently have been a sort of a response video to the question of the week that Greg over at Midlife Sports Cards has asked everyone. But today I wanted to do a different video. It's still sort of a response video, but it was one that I just felt I wanted to give my sort of 2 cents and my comments on, and it involves actually two videos that Mike Baseball Collector posted this week. The first one was on Monday, and I think he did a follow-up video possibly Wednesday, but I wanted to address some of the things that Mike raised, as well as some of the comments that were made on both of those videos. It seems that Mike and I have very similar collecting philosophies, if you want to call it. Now, we don't necessarily collect the exact same thing. He really likes on-card autographs of vintage cards. I'm not really into on-card autographs, so we may not match 100% in terms of what we collect, but our collecting philosophies, I think, really match up on various levels. And so this is more of my comments, sort of agreeing with Mike, addressing some of the comments that were left on his video, and just give you my general take on how I enjoy the hobby. Now, before I get into some of the different areas I want to talk about, I have my glasses on here because I wrote down some notes because I wanted to make sure I touched every subject that I want to talk about here. And I hope this video doesn't go too long, but there are several things I want to address. But before I get into the different areas here, one thing that I want to start off by saying is that a lot of us in the sports card community, we encourage the collectors out there to collect what you want, collect how you want. And it's a great community. And for the most part, we are very supportive of each other. Occasionally we get asked, hey, I'm just getting into the hobby. What should I collect? And basically our general answer is collect what you like, collect how you like. So while we may disagree on some of these topics that I'm going to be discussing here in this video, I've already discussed some of these things in previous videos, and I've gotten some, I don't want to say maybe negative feedback, but pushback on in some of the comments, and I expect sort of the same thing with this video as well. I expect maybe some thumbs down or some comments that disagree with my thinking, and that's to be expected. But in general, while we may disagree on different aspects of the hobby, I hope that we can all appreciate each other's differing opinions in how we, each of us, like to enjoy the hobby. You may enjoy the hobby one way, and I may enjoy it the other. And that's fine. There can be disagreements. There can be preferences, different preferences within the hobby. That's what I think is so great about the hobby, is there's so many options and so many things that you can do that work for you, that make you happy and enjoy the hobby, that may be different from someone else. So I don't know if I've ever, made a negative comment on any video that I've watched. That's just not my nature. If I see someone doing one thing, I think that's good for them, even though I may not collect the way that they do. So I don't shame them. I don't try to put them down. I don't try to tell them they're wrong in the way that they collect, because it differs from me. So again, I hope within the whole community here that we can appreciate each collector's way of enjoying the hobby, even if it may differ from how you enjoy the hobby. Okay, so with that out of the way, because I want to make it clear that when I go over some of these things here, these are my thoughts and my opinions on, again, how I enjoy the hobby. When I go over some of these things, they're not meant to put down. If you collect in a different way, my comments here are not meant to say that, okay, you're doing it different than me and that's wrong. Okay, so I just want to get that out of the way. So the main thing in topic of Mike's video was basically he doesn't care about PSA's changing grading standards over the years. And it's fairly apparent. Maybe PSA hasn't come out and specifically said, hey, our grading standards are changing, but it's fairly clear over the last 20 some years that PSA has been grading cards that what used to be PSA 5 isn't a PSA 5 today. It's pretty obvious to everyone. And according to Mike, that doesn't bother him. It doesn't bother me either. And I'm going to go over some of the reasons why that I don't care for my collection. I don't care that grading standards may have changed over the years. Because when I think of grading, I don't expect grading to be perfect. And so I can understand over time how grading can be inconsistent. I can understand how I could get a card back from PSA that has a certain grade. I crack it out of a slab and I resubmit it right away, that it could get a different grade because a different person is looking at it and determining based on their human factors. They have guidelines, of course, but they're humans. They have different ways of looking at things within certain guidelines that PSA or SGC or Beckett or whoever that tries to determine a particular grade. I don't expect perfection when I'm looking at a number grade on a slab, or if I were to submit a card to get graded. I'm not looking for perfection. For me, a number grade is a guide. I reference it to, now I know the Beckett still puts out price guides, but for years, before eBay and all that stuff, I subscribed to Beckett Price Guide. Well, in the name itself, Price Guide, it's meant to be a guide as to the current price or value of a particular card. Now, of course, now you have eBay and you have VCP and Card Ladder and all these other websites that give a lot more real-time data as opposed to a price guide that may come out once a month. But I always saw those price guides, again, as not absolute. That because this card says it's worth $5, I know if I go to a show, one dealer may have it for $4, one dealer may have it for $6, another dealer may have it for $5. And you may say, well, it says it in this book, it's worth $5. And the guy says, well, this is a really nice copy and I want $6 for it. The price guides were a guide. For me, a number grade of a card, and this is PSA, SGC, Beckett, no matter what grading company, for me, it's not meant to be absolute, that there's a human element in it that can differ from, you could keep resubmitting the same card, and I would never expect to keep resubmitting the same card to the same grading company and get the same grade every single time. I don't think that's realistic. Maybe at some point AI will become dominant in terms of the grading companies, but from what I know about AI functions based on the information you give it. Now it may learn, but initially you have to provide it data to work off of. So while PSA may institute some AI model in its grading and take the human element out of it, SGC may have its own AI model, Beckett may have its own AI model, CGC may have its own AI model, And so I don't know if we ever get to a point where a PSA 5 is the same as a SGC 5, is the same as a Beckett 5, is the same as a CGC 5. Because even with AI and the human element out, within PSA, you may get consistency. Within SGC, you may get consistency through AI. But between the different grading companies, you could get inconsistency. So to me, grading is never, ever going to be perfect because it's either going to have a human element to it or the AI is going to differ between the different grading companies. Even with, now, I don't use Beckett price guides anymore. I use VCP for my vintage prices. Even in VCP, they list the recent low price, the recent high price, and the average comp, if you want to call it, the average price for the card over the last, say, 12 months. So even there, for that guide of value, it's a guide. It depends on the eye appeal. Someone may like the centering versus the corners, or corners versus the centering, and may have the same grade. And one person may be willing to spend more for that card or less for a card, depending on how they like the eye appeal. So even with pricing, it's inconsistent. So again, that's my main thing with grading. I've never saw grading as something that can be consistent. So I'm not even talking about resubmitting a card now. A card graded 10 years ago, whatever that standards were, that was the grade at the time, and I'm okay with it. Now I may say, boy, that looks really nice for a 4, or man, oof, I don't know if that would grade a 4 today, but it's a 4. I'm not hung up on the number grade. If I like the card, I don't care if it's a 4, I don't care if it's a 5, I don't care if it's a 6. If I like the card, and if I can get it for a decent price, whatever I feel comfortable paying for that card, I'm happy with it. I don't care what the number grade is. Now, I want to give an example here of the human element in grading. So I decided actually to go to SGC's website, not to pick on SGC, but I didn't want to give the impression here that I'm solely focused on PSA, because that's the grading company that I go with for my collection. I want all my cards, and I'll talk about this later. I want all my cards in PSA slabs. But rather than use PSA's definition, I wanted to go with SGC's definitions of different number grades. And I want to talk about how, while they're different grade, standards to meet a certain grade, when I go over this here, hopefully you understand that there can be some nuances. And here's an example. Okay, so for a card to get an SGC 3, all right, the wording that they used, and this is for the corners, okay, there's obviously other aspects within the condition, but I'm just concentrating on the wording that they use for the corners. So for it to be an SGC 3, corners more rounded but not excessive. Okay, so corners more rounded but not excessive. For a 4, corners are slightly rounded. Okay, so the difference between the corners between a 3 and 4 is more rounded but not excessive versus slightly rounded. If I'm looking at two different cards, now again, there's training involved, hopefully, with these card companies, and well, this is what a more rounded looks like versus a slightly, even their own language to me makes it unclear as to a more rounded versus a slightly rounded. Then you get to an SGC 5. Now you get to minor rounding or fuzzing of corners. So you go from more rounded, slightly rounded, minor rounding, and then even at an SGC 6, slight fuzzing of corners. So you go for more rounded, slightly rounded, minor rounded, slightly fuzzy. I don't know if I could tell for the corners, like, but based on those definitions, to, so I may say, well, I think that corner is only minor, has minor rounding, and I may show it to a collecting friend of mine, and they may say, well, I think those corners are slightly rounded, and I can show it to someone else in the community, and they may say, well, you know what, I think the corners are a little bit more rounded. All right, so that's the corners and the different definitions there for SGC. Let's talk about creasing. Okay, so for an SGC4, you're allowed a light hairline crease. Okay, that's the wording that they use for an SGC4, light hairline crease. For an SGC5, one very slight surface or spider crease. Okay, what's the definition between a light hairline and a very slight surface or spider crease? So, I mean, even with their own definitions, I could see, even if I was sort of trained, how I could look at a card, maybe at the, see the same card, and then a month later see that same card and come to a slightly different conclusion on the corners or any creases found on the card, which may result in a different number grade. So that's why I've never thought of a number grade as absolute, that if someone within PSA, SGC, Beckett, again, any grading company, because there's a human element in there, and the definitions between one grade to the next, that it's not surprising to me at all that you could have a card that was graded 10 years ago that may get a different number if it was graded today, or if you send in a card today, crack it out, send it back in, that it could get a different grade. All right, so that was the main topic on Mike's video, but there were some other things that he brought up that were brought up in the comments that I want to touch upon as well. One of the people who commented on, couldn't understand or believe why anyone would like the PSA slab. Well, I for one do, and I'm going to explain why I like the PSA slab better than the SGC slab. And for me, it comes down to the label. Now, granted, I like SGC's tux. I think for the majority of vintage cards, the tux really gives a nice frame to it, and for most cards makes the cards stand out. Maybe not for 1971 Topps cards that are with the black border, sort of, fades in and all that stuff with the tux. But I like that tux that the SGC slab has. I don't like SGC's label, and the reason why I don't like it is for PSA, they use the same font and the same size font for the player, the card, the number grade, and the short little mint EXVG and all that stuff. It's all in the same font, and to be honest with you, that the PSA label is sort of boring, nondescript. It just has those little, the red outline and basic font, nothing flashy. And I like that. And the reason why I like that is for me and the eye appeal of a card. What is important to me, because in the grades that I can afford for some of these cards that I've bought, I understand that for some of them, they're going to have some flaws. Okay, just because of the cost of some of those cards in much better condition would be out of my price range. So I have a lot of cards that have some flaws to them. But the main thing for me is, if I just look at that card, what's the first thing that I see? if the first thing that I see is the main image of the card, the player, and my eye doesn't go directly to whatever flaw that card may have, that's the card for me. That's the card that I can enjoy. There have been some cards where, for a perfect example, my 1957 Frank Robinson rookie card was in a PSA slab. It was a PSA 5, but it was off center left to right. And every time I pick up that card, because of the design of the card, whatever, just for whatever reason, every time I would look at that card, my eye went to the fact that it was off center before I could actually enjoy the image of Frank Robinson. So I eventually sold that and bought a card in a lower number grade. Spent about the same money as what I sold the PSA 5 for, and got a PSA 4 that was well centered. Now I can enjoy that card. Now when I look at that card, I see, the first thing I see is the image of Frank Robinson, and I don't notice, as opposed to the previous card, that it was off center. Same thing goes with the slab for me. Again, this is just for me. With PSA slabs, my eye doesn't go to the slab. If I pick up the card, my eye immediately goes to the card. It doesn't go to the label. With SGC, the thing that I don't like about SGC is that the name, the year, the set is like in a smaller font, and that number grade is prominent on that label. And I've looked at, I don't have any of those SGC slabs in my collection, but when I'm at Strongsville or the National, I'm looking at the cards and at the different dealers, and my eye goes, and I see that number grade, then I see the card, I see the number grade, then I see the card. I don't care what the number grade is. That's not my focus. I don't want to pick up a slab and go, oh, this is an SGC 5 of this card. So again, that's just how my mind works in terms of visually enjoying a card. So that's why I like the PSA slab over the SGC slab. And again, it's consistency for me. And I've said this many times in videos or comments or replying to comments in different videos. If 5 years ago, when I really started building my vintage collection, if I had started off buying cards in SGC slabs, I'd be having a different conversation here to say that, hey, I want my entire collection to be in SGC slabs because I want that consistent look to my cards. So that's honestly the only difference between me having my cards in PSA slabs versus SGC slabs. And I'm 500 cards roughly into my vintage collection. I'm not about to change now. And there's just, my previous video, I showed off my Hank Aaron, my complete Hank Aaron Playing Days run that I finally completed. And at the end of the video, I did a tabletop quick view of all the cards spread out. And a thing that stood out to me like a sore thumb as I went through all the cards was once I got to 1965, that's the only one that's in a BVG slab. And that's one that I'm eventually going to want to switch over to PSA. Now, I could sell that card and just take the money then and buy a PSA copy and not have to worry about submitting it. But I like the look of that card. I want that card in my collection. I don't want to sell it and then try to find one that looks just as nice as that one. I don't know how hard it would be, how long I'd have to wait. So yeah, that's the plain and simple answer of why I collect PSA slabs. I also don't want you to think that I'm ignoring all the negative things about PSA, and I've stated such in my videos, just like Mike has, that there are things that I don't like about PSA. The time to grade. Now, I don't submit a lot of cards to PSA for grading. I primarily buy cards that are already graded. Now, I crossed over 4 cards at this year's National, mainly because the cost for grading those cards would have been the same if I had sent them into PSA, but I got them back during the show, and I saved on shipping and insurance, didn't have to worry about those fairly valuable cards getting lost or damaged in the mail, so I decided to do it at the show. But I understand. I fully understand that when it comes time to cross over my other cards, I'm not going to pay those show prices to cross over. Those other cards aren't worth it. So I'm going to be sending them into PSA, and I understand that. I won't get those cards back for 6 months, 9 months. Do I like it? No. Is it something that I've chosen to do because that's what I want those cards to be in a PSA slab, and I understand that's the sacrifice I have to make? Yeah. Do I have to like it? No. Am I still going to do it? Yes. Customer service. I know a lot of people bash PSA for customer service. I've never personally had to deal with PSA customer service. I've never had to deal with SGC's customer service. So in terms of the arguments back and forth of PSA customer service and how SGC customer service is, so much better, I don't have that experience. I've never had to deal with it, so I don't care about it. It doesn't impact my collecting. I've never had to deal with PSA. Now, if I ever do, and I have a terrible experience, well, again, I'm going to add that to the list of things that I don't like about PSA, but still not going to stop me from having my cards in PSA slabs. And the final thing that I don't like at all for PSA is their tiered grading cost. I still don't understand, other than making more money, why it costs more to grade a card that's worth $3,000 than it is a card that's worth $300 than it is a card worth $30. Now, you can maybe somewhat make the argument that if you're submitting them, there's the cost for insurance while the card is in PSA's possession, but it can't be that much difference. I don't know. You still have to pay for shipping. I think you have to pay for your own insurance that may cover PSA. I don't know. I don't understand the model. PSA has always used that, and people are still submitting cards to PSA. So if I was PSA, I wouldn't change it. But do I like it? No. Have I spent $150, in one case $300 to get a card graded? Yes. Why? Because I wanted to. I wanted that card crossed over from a BBG slab to a PSA slab. And for my 52 Bowman Mickey Mantle, it cost me $300 to do so. Was I happy about it? No. Did I still do it? Yes, because I wanted that card in a PSA slab. That was my choice and my decision. You may think I'm an idiot. All right. A lot of you were calling Mike an idiot for some of his beliefs, and that's fine. You may think I'm an idiot for wasting money, that I'm stupid. This is how I enjoy the hobby for me. It's my choice on how I want to spend my money within the hobby. So again, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. That may differ from you. So anyway, that's I'm not promoting PSA. I'm not a PSA fanboy. I'm not ignoring all the other issues that PSA has out there in the hobby. Despite all that stuff, I still want my collection in PSA slabs. All right. I know Mike had some comments on his video. I've gotten previous comments on different videos that that I buy the slab and not the card. And that's not how I see it. I could make the same argument. There are some of you out there, some of you are slab gnostic that don't mind different slabs within your collection. You may have some ungraded cards. You may have some PSA graded cards, SGC graded cards, Beckett cards, and you're fine with the different mixture. That's great. That's wonderful. I want that consistency. So when I get comments of, "Oh, John, you're just buying the slab, not the card." For those of you who and I know there's some of you out there that want your collection to be solely in SGC slabs. And that's, hey, if that's what you want and how you enjoy your cards, I have no problem with that. But I could make that same argument to those people of saying they buy the slab and not the card because they only want SGC slab cards. So what's the difference if I want my cards in PSA slabs? Am I buying the slab and not the card? No. I buy a card because I like the look of the card. When I bought my 1954 Topps Hank Aaron rookie card at the National, it was in an SGC slab. I bought the card because I loved the look of the card. Now, I spent another $150 to get it crossed over to PSA because I wanted the card in a PSA slab to be consistent with my collection. I didn't buy the card because of the PSA slab. I bought the card because I loved the look of the card and I felt that I paid a reasonable price for that card. So no, I would push back on any comments that say I buy the slab and I don't buy the card. I buy the card because I love the look of the card and hopefully the price that I paid for the card. And ultimately, whether it comes in it already or me crossing it over, I ultimately want that card in a PSA slab to make it consistent with all my other cards. What's important for me in terms of the number grade, again, I use it as a guide, is, and I've said this before in other videos, so I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but what I do is when I want to go after a particular card, I go into VCP and I say, okay, I'm willing to pay, or I know I'm probably gonna have to pay, let's say $100 for this card. Well, what number grade ranges have cards sold around $100? So for a particular card, it may be, all right, cards that sell for $100 have ranged maybe a PSA 4 or PSA 5. Okay, so I know that I'm not looking for a PSA 7 copy. If I only want to spend or only have $100 to spend for this card, it doesn't make sense for me to look at PSA 7 copies because let's say they may go for $400 and I only have $100 to spend. I don't necessarily want to go for a 1, but that's obviously in my budget. Hey, maybe I can get a card that has a great eye appeal for a 1 and costs me $30 instead of $100. Hey, I can save money. So I look at sort of the upper end of the number grade for my searches on eBay. Once I know what number grade ranges to look for, the number grade is irrelevant to me. Now I'm searching for what's the nicest looking card I can get for the lowest amount of money within my upper range of the budget. That's all the number grade means to me at all. It becomes the card. I use the number grade as a range of what cards can I be looking at when I'm searching eBay or whether I'm at Strongsville or the National. Because it doesn't make sense for me to look at cards that are outside or higher than a particular range because I know it's going to be more than I can afford. And for me, and I pride myself in terms of, and I have several examples in my collection where I find a card that to me looks far better than the number grade. Those are the cards that I absolutely love. I love getting a card in a PSA 3 or 4 that looks like a 4 or 5 because I'm saving money in buying them because they're priced accordingly. Now, they may be priced at the higher end of the comps because of the eye appeal, but generally speaking, I'd be saving some money as opposed to buying a card in a higher grade. Perfect example, at this year's National, when I picked up my 1963 Topps Hank Aaron, I was going back and forth between two cards. One was a PSA 4 and one was a PSA 5. The PSA 5 was only about $40 more expensive than the PSA 4. Ultimately, I chose the PSA 4 copy because overall to me it had the nicest eye appeal, front, back, corners, registration, colors, just everything. The PSA 4 copy to me looked a lot better than the PSA 5. And so I went with the one that had the nicest eye appeal, which happened to be a 4. And hey, I was able to buy that card for less than the PSA 5 copy. So if I was all about the number grade, and I would have gone with, oh, hey, only $40 more, I'll get the 5. I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much then as the one I picked up that was a PSA 4. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, and I know I'm running really long here, and I do apologize. Thanks for those who are sticking around through this point here, is value. And I know this is something that Greg over at Midlife Sports Cards has raised recently about should we care about the value of our cards over time? Do we want to buy cards that we anticipate going up in value over time? I got some sort of negative comments when I did my crossover reveal of the 4 cards that I took to the National to crossover from BBG to PSA. And on every single card, the grade came back lower than what the BBG grade was. And I anticipated that. Now, a couple of them had a much lower grade reduction than BBG. Again, I'm happy that they're in PSA slabs. I love the look of the cards. I love the cards. I don't care what the number is. But a couple people pointed out, like for my, here's an example here. For my 1954 Topps Ted Williams number 250, it was in a BBG 7. I had a BBG 7 copy of that card. And if you watched my video, you know that it came back a 4.5. Oh, how devastating for me that it came back a 4.5. Do you know how much value I lost in this card by switching it from a BBG 7 down to now a PSA 4.5? Well, to give you an example, a BBG 7, if you look at it up on VCP, a BBG 7, they say is worth $1,200. If you look at the detail, that $1,200, the last sale of a BBG 7 copy was 10 years ago. That's how few BBG 7s have been graded. In fact, there haven't been a whole lot of BBG copies just in any grade of the 54 Topps Ted Williams number 250. So who knows what that really was worth. And a PSA 4.5 now on average is around $600. So, oh my gosh, John, you are an idiot. Why did you not keep that in a BBG 7, try to sell that BBG 7, take the money and get a card that has a higher number grade than this one? Well, it's because I like this card. I like this example that I have in my collection. Even though the back here is off center, I still love the overall look of this card. Now, again, you may think that I'm an idiot for going through this process, and not only did the quote-unquote value of the card drop in half, I spent $150 crossing it over. So, the loss I've taken on this card went from, $1,200 down to, $600, and then another $100, so $750. Okay, loss or reduction of value that I took on this card. Do I care? No, I don't. I honestly don't. And again, you may think, why, John? Why do you not care that the value of this card now has been reduced? And it's, well, one, to be completely honest with you, the more I looked at this card, I think Beckett was very generous with its 7, to be quite honest with you. With the centering on the back, there is some off-centering on the front, top to bottom. I even questioned whether it really was a Beckett 7, and it was an old slab. Like I said, the last copy that was, in VCP's database sold 10 years ago. And it was in an old BVG slab. It had the four, the breakout of the 4 different condition factors. So it was in an old BVG label. And I picked it up in 2015. I picked that BVG version up in 2015. So I had that card for 10 years. And again, so you may say, well, it dropped from a 7 down to a 4.5, and look at the value that it dropped. I don't know if I would have sold that if someone would have given me a BVG 7 Pro. I don't think I would have sold it be able to sell it for $1,200. So what I would have been able to sell it for, I don't know. But to me, when I look at spending money on baseball cards, I don't treat my cards as investments. I don't see them as an asset class. And again, I'm not putting down those who do. If you want to buy cards in high grades because you see the potential future increase in value of those cards, that's great. I have no problem with that collecting philosophy. The way I look at my collecting is it's truly a hobby. And in hobbies, you spend money on. I don't buy a card. Let's say I just, would buy this card instead of crossing it over. I don't buy this card thinking and hoping that, man, all right, I bought this for X, and man, I hope that in 5-10 years, it's going to be up 20%. It's going to increase in value. No, I bought the card because I want the card in my collection. So you may say, well, again, why would you spend money on a card and you don't care if it goes down in value? All right. Well, I buy a car, right? And unless it's some special classic car that, may appreciate over time, you drive that car off the lot and it's worth 20-30% less as soon as you drive it off the lot. Does that mean I'm never going to buy a car because cars depreciate in value? No. I need a car. I need it, to go from point A to point B. There's certain things in life that you spend money on that you don't get a value back. I'm going to be going on a nice trip with my wife and my brother-in-law and his girlfriend. We're doing a Caribbean, all-inclusive trip. All right, that's going to cost me X amount of money. Now, I'm going to get some nice memories of it, but I'm going to spend that money, and I'm not getting that money back. There's no appreciating of value in that. If I go out to eat, yeah, I may enjoy that meal, but that's money that's gone. For me, I don't see my cards as anything different. Again, you may disagree. You may think I'm crazy for thinking so, but I don't. Once I have a card in my possession, I don't think about what the value is, what it will be. Now, I do a year-end video, my top 50 most valuable cards. I just do it for the fun of it. And if anything, maybe to know what the values are for insurance purposes. Okay? That's it. Let's say I paid $600 for this card. Okay? And a year from now, it's only worth $500. Am I going to like this card any less? No. If next year it goes from $600 to $800, am I going to enjoy this card more? No. I'm going to enjoy this card for the fact that I own this card. It's a great looking copy. you know, hey, I have a 54 Topps Ted Williams card. It's gorgeous. I'm so lucky and blessed to have this in my collection. And I don't care if it turns out to be worth $50. And I'm not going to regret, oh my gosh, I spent $600 for that 5 years ago. Now it's only worth $50. Ah, man, I don't like this card anymore. No, that's my mindset. Again, is talking about how I enjoy my hobby and how I collect and think about collecting. And you may have a completely 180-degree different viewpoint on the value of cards. You may want your cards and strategically buy your cards so that they will be worth more in the future, and that's great. That's wonderful. If that's how you enjoy collecting and the hobby, that is great. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you because that's the way you enjoy collecting. I collect that I get the card and it's in my collection. So the other thing is that, well, aren't you worried about when I'm gone, my son is going to get my entire collection. Okay. He already knows this. And it's like, well, don't you want your son to have a collection that's worth something? Son, if you're watching this, I'm not collecting. I'm not building my collection for my son. If I wanted to give my son something that was worth money, I wouldn't be buying sports cards. I'd be putting money in some index fund or bonds or some sort of investment that then he would get when I am gone. That way, okay, here, you have an account now that is worth X amount of money. I could start some trust that when I pass away, all that money goes to my son. If that's if that was my goal is to enjoy my collection, collect cards that I want, and build a collection that I want. When I die and my son gets this collection, if it has some value, that's wonderful. Then I hope he can do whatever, he can sell everything if he wants, and whatever money he can get from it, that's great. Hopefully it'll help him in his life. But I don't collect to build a certain valuable collection so I can pass that value on to my son. Again, if my son's watching this, I know he watches some of my videos. Sorry to inform you if you didn't already know, but I collect for myself, for my enjoyment. When I'm gone, hey, I would hope that they're worth something, that he could sell them and get something from them. But if they become suddenly worthless in hopefully many, many, many more years that I still have on this earth here, so be it. And yeah, the other thing is, when I buy a card, I can't control what the price does, up or down. Now, you may think that you buy a card at a certain point in time at a reasonable price, and you may buy a player that you say, hey, this player is going to continue to be popular in the future, even though it's vintage, and all the discussion of, are vintage cards going to be worth anything in the future? I don't want to go down that path. But just sort of to wrap things up here, I have no control over, once I buy a card, what other copies sell for, and whether that price goes up or down in the future. I have no control over it. I own one copy of a card in a certain number grade, and other copies of that card in that same number grade may in the future sell for more. They may sell for less. I have no control of it, so I don't worry about it. And again, I think John Mangini is the same way, and Mike is the same way, and I'm sure there are others out there that I don't worry about things that are out of my control. My wife, she worries about everything. And I say, can you do you have any influence on what will happen? And she was like, no. And I'm like, then why worry about it? She's like, well, but I said, if I have no control, if I can't do anything to change a certain outcome, I don't worry about it. So I buy a card, it's in my collection, and that's it. I don't worry about whether the value goes up or down over time. So honestly, this loss that I took when I crossed this over, that's why it doesn't matter to me. I have this card now in a PSA slab that goes along with the majority of all my other vintage cards, and that's all I care about. So again, I appreciate you making your way through all this video here. It's going to be about 50 minutes. I was afraid it was going to be long here, but I wanted to talk about many different issues, give you my thoughts. Some of them I've already addressed in previous videos, but I want to touch upon some of the things that were brought up in Mike's video, and actually a recent video that Greg over at Midlife Sports Cards has raised on his videos as well, regarding future value of cards. And so yeah, would love to know in the comments. Again, I'm sure I'm going to get some pushback, some, hey, you know, I think you're wrong here, you're looking at this in the wrong way. All right, that's fine. I can take it. You can give me those comments. Maybe some of you will agree to disagree, and I actually love those comments. Would love to know why you think, you know, why you collect in a different way, and maybe say, hey, this is why I enjoy it this way, but I can, even though I disagree, I can understand why you enjoy it your way. So again, would love to see the comments that you have here, and with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.